Hi, I'm Obi,
I'm Starlight.
and we're going to be talking to you and teaching you all about coal and Dutch oven cooking. So, couple things. We're going to first teach you how to cook over coals here in this fire pit. We're also going to be cooking in this Dutch oven right here. We're actually going to be cooking some delicious gluten-free brownies. I brought Starlight along here because she couldn't miss out on an opportunity for a sweet treat. So she's going to help me out here. First things first, we always want to make sure we're being safe before we are doing anything with fire or coals, things like that. And so we always want to make sure we have our water bucket and our critter stick. We also want to make sure we have a good surface for where we're going to be having our fire or our coal cooking happening. So always make sure. Also check with your local fire district to ensure that you're not on any type of burning ban or outdoor cooking ban or anything like that. So those are just some safety tips. We also want to make sure to protect ourselves, so no loose articles of clothing, hair tied back, things like that. So first things first, for coal cooking, what we're talking about is these lovely guys right here. This is coal or charcoal. We're going to be using these to bake the brownies. We're going to be putting the brownies here in this cast iron Dutch oven and using these coals to bake the brownies. Couple important pieces that we need. First, this is called a chimney. This is actually what we're going to cook our coals in. When I mean cook our coals, right now they're cold, right? But we have to get them hot, so we have to cook them. We have to get them started and lighted or lit. So that's what all this kind of tinder and roughage is right here, is we're going to use this right here to get our coals going. So each coal actually burns at an incredibly hot temperature, like 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit, if not more. So they're incredibly hot when they're lit and on fire. However, when we're talking about baking, they're going to bake or cook at a temperature of about 30 to 35 degrees. So what that means is within the space that this coal has, within this, it's going to bake at about 30 to 35 degrees. So if we wanted to cook something at around 350 degrees, we would need about 10 of these guys, all right? Anywhere between 10 to 12 of these guys. Now, for our cast iron Dutch oven, we have a special number that's listed right here on the top of the lid. This is a number 10 cast iron Dutch oven. What that means is each cast iron and each Dutch oven has a different number associated with it depending on the size of it. So this is a number 10. What that means is we're gonna follow a rule of 3, meaning in order to bake, we want equal temperature on the top and on the bottom. But there's going to be all our food and all of our baking items is going to be on the bottom. So we don't want to like have it equal on top and equal on bottom, because more heat is going to need to go down into the Dutch oven than it is going to be needing to come up. Also, heat rises, so we're going to need more on top. That's where we follow that rule of 3. We're going to take this number 10 and we're going to add 3. That means we're going to take 10 plus 3, which is 13, meaning we're going to need 13 coals on top of our Dutch oven. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 12, 13. So we're going to need approximately 13 coals to cook or bake on top, right? This is going to give us about 350 degrees of heat that's going to bake my brownies. We're then going to take this number 10, right? Because we got to remember the bottom, take this number 10 and subtract 3. 10 minus 3 is 7. So we're going to need 7 coals to go on the bottom. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we'll have 7 coals on the bottom and 10 coals on the top. So let's get these coals on fire. So what we're going to do in our chimney is do somewhat of like a layering method. We're going to drop some of these coals that we need down in here. I'm going to put some roughage. maybe a couple of these sticks, little tiny bits of kindling and tinder. Put some more coals in there. I think that's all of them. I'm gonna do a couple extra. I always like to do a couple extra just for precaution's sake, just in case. Probably about four extra guys. Put them on there. So the reason my chimney has these holes in it right here is that's where it's gonna get a lot of that oxygen. So I'm gonna grab my matches. Starlight, do you see my matches? Great. Okay. All right. Now I like using these long ones when I'm working with coals because it kind of keeps my fingers like away. So I always recommend these anytime you're working with coals or grilling or anything like that. So always light your match away from you. All right, now that I have it going, what you want to do is also kind of get some of this oxygen going. You want to kind of be able to move it around a bit. So I also want to get a bit more. I got this handy dandy thing, so I want to give it a bit more oxygen down in there. And we're gonna let those coals burn. It's gonna take approximately 20 minutes to get those coals burned and to a place that we want them to be. Because what we're looking for is white coals. All right, so now while my coals are cooking, I'm gonna go ahead and bake my brownies. So I'm gonna do it exactly as the box is instructing me. So I'll pour in my batter. There we go. For those of you that don't know, I'm also allergic to gluten, so I'm all about the gluten-free. Yay, gluten-free. It takes 1 egg, so I'm gonna crack my egg in here. If you don't know, eggshells are wonderful for your plants, especially tomato plants or grapes. If you crunch them up really well and just kind of sprinkle them on the top of the soil, it helps kind of keep all those little bugs down, and it adds extra calcium to your plants. So save those eggshells for your plants at home, or just stick them straight in the compost. They're also awesome for that. Next, it's gonna take 1/3 cup vegetable oil. So got my oil here. My 1/3 cup. All right, and now my 1/3 cup of water. So I'll pour that in there. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and mix it all around. Don't that look good? It's got even some chocolate chunks in it. That'll be good melty gooiness. I don't know about any of you, but I'm a lick the bowl kind of person. So after we're done with this, I might have a little, you know what I mean? Okay. All right. Now let's check those coals. Okay. Starlight, how are they doing?
Doing good.
Great. They look about ready. All right, so what we've done is taken our chimney off here. All right, we're gonna set that aside. Still really hot, so be careful. Now, if you see how these coals have a little bit of white to them, they're still kind of black, but what that means is they're cooking. All right, so they're like pretty much just about ready. We could probably get some of them going. Some of the bottom ones still need to be lit a bit more, so maybe we'll give them just a little bit longer. In the meantime, I'm gonna go over here. I wanna heat my cast iron up. So anytime you're working with coals, and anytime you're working with cast iron, you always wanna heat your pans up. If you've ever noticed that, like, let's say you're baking brownies at home, even in your glass pan, if you're just pouring your batter mix straight into a cold pan, what's happening is your batter is actually baking into the pan. But instead, if you heat the pan up, when you go to pour into it, the pan is already hot, so it'll immediately start baking it, right? Instead of baking our brownies into the pot, we want our pot to bake the brownies. So we're gonna heat this guy up before we put our mixture in. So to do so, all that needs to happen is I'm just gonna set him right there, right on top of the coals. While the coals are cooking, my Dutch oven is gonna heat up. Cool, you can. All right, so now I've taken my pot, it's nice and warm, off of my coals here. So now I'm just gonna grease it down with some shortening. Get all the sides. This is really important. It just adds like that extra layer of protection to your cast iron when baking or cooking. So always make sure to get it really well greased. There we go. All right, and now I'm gonna pour in my brownies. Right. For those of you that are also a lick the bowl kind of person, I'll bet your mouth is watering right about now. All right. Now, I'm going to grab my lid. Pop them right back on top of there. Come right over here. Oh, there we go. All right, so as I mentioned, this is a number 10 Dutch oven. So 10 minus 3 is 7. So I want 7 coals on the bottom. And look at these guys, they're so ready. So we've got, we're gonna kind of move some of them over to the side. We're gonna evenly space them out. Okay. I might actually stick this guy in the middle. There we go. Okay. As you can see, just like that, got 7 coals right there. And I'm gonna pop my Dutch oven right on top of those. All right, now I'm gonna take 10 plus 3 is 13. So 13 coals on top. So one thing about when choosing a Dutch oven, I really like the ones that have this lid that kind of like flips up like this, because it keeps the coals in place on top of your lid. I'll show you here in a minute the number 12 Dutch oven that I mentioned before, and you'll see how the lid is kind of curved. And so it makes it a bit more difficult to keep those coals placed on top. Starlight?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12.
12. Oh, there we go. 13. There we go. All right. Cool. I can just set these guys over here. And then end up needing them. You never know. This guy right here, see how he's kind of small? He might burn out a bit quicker. So if he does burn out, I'm going to replace one of these guys right here with him. So you can kind of watch them, and if they do start to kind of burn out, you can grab one of the ones that you have here and replace them. But the coals themselves, each coal will burn for about an hour. So sometimes longer depending on the quality of coal that you buy. But on average, like about an hour, these coals will burn. So now we're gonna wait approximately 30 to 35 minutes. We'll check our brownies and see how they're doing. All right, so now we've kind of like let it cook for a while. We've got a storm moving in. One great thing about using coals is there's not a lot of sparks flying anywhere like there would be with a fire. It's all very contained in here, as you can see. Not only that, like if it kind of starts raining, it's still gonna cook. My coals are still gonna cook. I can also put some foil just right over the top of this to also kind of trap in that heat and keep any like rain or anything that's gonna come down. So let's go ahead and check on our brownies here. I did end up switching out a couple of the coals that did kind of like end up burning away. So I'm just gonna pop these off real quick. And then I'm gonna get some of this dust, this coal dust kind of off of the lid. We had a fallen tree like right around the corner here. We're doing a lot of mitigation on site, and so I got some pine needles from the tree that we were doing, that we cut down for mitigation. But I'm just gonna kind of brush some of this off before I go lifting the lid. All right. Just dip that in water just in case. All right, now I'm gonna pop this lid off, see how they're doing. Ooh, that is what I talk about, good looking brownies. So let's go ahead and take them over to the table and cut into these bad boys. All right. Oh, all right, you ready, Starlight?
I'm so ready.
Okay, we're gonna cut right into these guys. Oh, they're nice and gooey. They're not the most beautiful, but they sure will be tasty. All right. Oh, does that look good or what?
It looks amazing.
And then if you also look, proper care of that Dutch oven and greasing it really well, it'll just come right off of there, as you can see. So, should we have a little try?
I'm ready.
All